There is a mountainside in western Turkey where water appears to be doing something impossible. It pours from the earth warm and clear. It moves across bright white shelves, spills into shallow blue pools, and flows over ledges that look less like rock than frozen water. From a distance, Pamukkale does not look built by geology. It looks built by a river that forgot how to remain liquid. The terraces descend the hillside in pale layers, each one shaped like a small dam, a shallow bowl, or the edge of a waterfall paused in the middle of falling. The name Pamukkale means cotton castle, and from far away, that is exactly what it resembles. But nothing here is artificial. No ancient builder carved these pools. No lost civilization poured white stone down the mountain. The terraces were made by water. Not water carrying mud, not water cutting rock away, water building rock as it flows. That is the mystery at the center of Pamukkale. Most rivers change the world by erosion. They wear down cliffs, they deepen channels, they drag sediment from one place and leave it somewhere else. Pamukkale does the opposite. Its water arrives carrying stone in an invisible form. Then, as it moves across the open air, it begins leaving that stone behind. The process is not instant. No stream becomes solid in a single second. But over years, decades, centuries, and far longer stretches of time, the water deposits layer after layer of calcium carbonate. The soft mineral film hardens. New water flows across it. Another layer forms, then another. Eventually, a hillside becomes a staircase. A spring becomes a wall. A waterfall becomes stone. To understand Pamukkale, you have to begin below the surface. Deep underground, water moves through layers of limestone and other carbonate-rich rock. As it travels, it becomes heated by the earth and enriched with dissolved minerals. Down there, the water is under pressure. It is warm. It is mineral-rich. And it is carrying material that will later become visible as rock. Then the water rises. It comes through fractures and spring outlets along the slope above the Büyük Menderes Valley. When it reaches the surface, the conditions change immediately. The pressure drops, the water cools, carbon dioxide escapes into the air, and the chemistry that allowed the water to hold dissolved calcium begins to shift. The water can no longer carry the same amount of mineral, so calcium carbonate begins to precipitate. That is the word scientists use when a dissolved substance leaves water and becomes solid again. At Pamukkale, it becomes travertine. Travertine is a form of limestone created when mineral-rich water deposits calcium carbonate at or near the surface. It can build walls, ledges, channels, terraces, and thin crusts around nearly anything in the water's path. At first, the deposit may be soft. Fresh mineral layers can appear creamy, wet, almost gel-like. But as water continues moving and the material dries and hardens, the surface becomes stone. This is why Pamukkale seems to be alive. The terraces are not simply relics from a distant age. They are part of a continuing system. Water still moves. Minerals still settle. White surfaces can brighten, darken, grow, crack, or change shape depending on where the water flows. The mountain is still being made, but it is being made slowly enough that most visitors see only the result. They see the bright pools, they see the white shelves, they see water spilling over a surface that looks like snow, ice, coral, and stone all at once. What they do not see is the invisible cargo inside the water. Pamukkale is not the only place on Earth where travertine forms. Mineral springs can leave calcium carbonate in many parts of the world, but here the scale is extraordinary. The thermal water emerges high on a cliff nearly 200 meters above the plain. As it flows downhill, it creates a broad field of white terraces, petrified cascades, shallow basins, and mineral walls. Some of the pools are small enough to resemble steps. Others widen into pale bowls filled with blue water that reflects the sky. The forms are so clean and bright that people often mistake them for salt, snow, or ice. But they are stone. They were made by water that carried mineral from underground and released it into the open world. The appearance of Pamukkale has always made people stop. Long before modern tourists arrived with cameras, people living in this region understood that the springs were unusual. The city did not rise beside Pamukkale by accident. It rose because of the water. Hot springs drew travelers, patients, worshippers, merchants, soldiers, and people searching for relief from illness or injury. In the ancient world, mineral water was not merely a curiosity. It was part of medicine, ritual, and daily life. The waters of Pamukkale became part of the identity of Hierapolis. The city developed as a spa center. Later, under Roman rule, it became more important still. Baths, streets, temples, tombs, theaters, and public buildings expanded across the ridge above the terraces. For centuries, people traveled to a place where hot water came out of the ground and left white stone behind. That is what makes Pamukkale different from a beautiful spring in isolation. It is not only a geological story, it is a human story built beside a geological process. The water created the setting. Then people built their lives around it. But Pamukkale has never been completely stable. The same geological forces that create hot springs also remind people that the ground beneath this place is active. Western Türkiye lies in a region shaped by faulting, stretching crust, earthquakes, and rising geothermal water. The ancient city of Hierapolis was damaged and rebuilt more than once after earthquakes. The minerals rise because the geology allows them to rise. The terraces grow because the water emerges into a new environment and begins to change. The terraces grow because the water emerges into a new environment and begins to change. The landscape is beautiful because it is not still. It is the visible surface of an underground system, a system of heat, pressure, rock, water, gas, and time. The phrase, "a river that turns to stone when it touches air," is poetic, but it points toward something real. The water does not become stone because air transforms it like magic. It becomes stone because the air is part of a chemical change. When the water reaches the surface, it loses carbon dioxide. As it cools and spreads across the slope, calcium carbonate precipitates from the water. Evaporation can help concentrate the minerals further. Tiny irregularities in the surface begin collecting deposits: a grain of sand, a blade of grass, a leaf, a small edge in the rock. A rim grows higher, a shallow pool forms behind it. Then the pool spills over and the next wall begins below. That is how a landscape can build itself. Not by one dramatic event, by repetition. Drop after drop, layer after layer. A single stream may appear gentle, but millions of repeated flows can create an entire white mountainside. This is one reason the terraces have such strange shapes. They are not carved with sharp tools. They are built by water choosing routes. As mineral deposits rise, water finds the lowest edge and spills over it. That new flow line begins collecting more calcium carbonate. The edge thickens, the next pool takes shape. Over time, the water becomes its own architect. It makes channels, then changes them. It builds rims, then overflows them. It creates a pool, then slowly shifts the pool somewhere else. The terraces we see today are snapshots of a moving process. Some surfaces are wet and blue, some are dry and chalk white. Some are smooth, some are textured like frozen foam. Some are bright with fresh mineral coating. Others are darker where water no longer reaches regularly. That variation is not a flaw in the landscape. It is proof that the system is alive. Pamukkale is often photographed as if it were a single solid white wall. But up close it is more complicated. The pools are separated by delicate mineral rims. The water moves through narrow channels that can redirect across the terrace surface. The white crust is not indestructible. It can be damaged. It can discolor. It can stop growing if water no longer reaches a section often enough. That vulnerability became especially important in the modern era. As Pamukkale became internationally famous, more visitors came to walk, bathe, photograph, and experience the terraces directly. Hotels and development in the area also place pressure on the water system and the landscape around it. A place built by slow mineral flow can be altered quickly by human use. When water is diverted, redirected, polluted, or reduced, the terraces change. When people walk across delicate new deposits, the surface can wear down. When the natural flow pattern is interrupted, some areas can dry, darken, or lose their bright white appearance. That is why the modern story of Pamukkale is not only about beauty, it is also about management. How do you protect a landscape that depends on water continuing to move? How do you allow people to see it without letting the act of seeing damage the thing they came to see? The answer has required limits. Water has to be directed carefully across different sections of the terraces. Visitor access has to be controlled. Some areas need time to rest, refill, or recover their mineral coating. The goal is not to freeze Pamukkale in place. This is an important distinction. Pamukkale is not a marble sculpture. It is a chemical landscape. The white surface depends on thermal water continuing to arrive with dissolved minerals. It depends on that water spreading, cooling, releasing carbon dioxide, and leaving calcium carbonate behind. If the water stops, the terraces do not simply remain unchanged forever. They become a record of what once happened. The same is true for many natural systems. A coral reef, a glacier, a wetland, a river delta, and a travertine terrace are not objects in the ordinary sense. They are processes. They look permanent because the process has been running longer than a human life. But their shape depends on conditions continuing. Pamukkale forces us to notice that difference. The terraces feel ancient, and they are, but they are also new. Fresh calcium carbonate still coats parts of the surface. New mineral layers can form where water flows. The white stone is both old and unfinished. That creates a strange sense of time. A person can stand barefoot in shallow, warm water on a surface that was created by flows older than any nearby city. At the same time, the water under their feet may be building the next layer. Past and present are happening in the same place. That is part of why Pamukkale feels unreal. It is not simply a landscape made in the past. It is a landscape making itself now. And yet there is another layer to the story. Because the white terraces are not only an example of geology, they are also an archive. The mineral deposits preserve the trace of where water has gone. A dry terrace tells us water changed course. A bright wet rim tells us water is building there now. A darker patch may show a place where the flow has weakened or been interrupted. Every surface is a map of recent water movement. The stone records the river records the underground. And the underground records the deeper geology of the region. In that sense, Pamukkale is a visible translation of invisible processes. Deep water rises. Dissolved mineral travels with it. The surface changes the chemistry. The chemistry changes the water changes the land. The water is the builder, the stone is the memory. And on a hillside in Türkiye, it still leaves a thin white line behind, until one day, that line becomes a rim, the rim becomes a pool, and the pool becomes a mountain that looks as though water turned to stone. Hi, Chini here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like, so you get notified when a new video drops. It's also the best way to support our channel.